Hello, everyone who's joining us. Thanks for making the time to join us this evening. My name is Michael. I'm the events coordinator and publicist at Annie Bloom's Books. For those of you who aren't familiar with the store, we're located in Portland, Oregon, in the heart of Multnomah Village, where we've been for 43 years now. We're open on weekdays from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and weekends from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Our website is always open. You can shop day and night at annieblooms.com. You could go there right now if you wanted to buy tonight's book. We're going to encourage you to do so. That'd be wonderful. We offer curbside pickup, in-store pickup, local delivery, and a couple of different shipping options. Plenty of ways to get the book. I just put the link in the chat so you can click on that. We have some great events coming up in the next few weeks. On Tuesday, the 15th, we have Anita Kelly, who's a local author, Love and Other Disasters. The first openly non-binary contestant on America's favorite cooking show falls for their clumsy competitor in this delicious romantic comedy. The week after that, on the 22nd, Tuesday, Anne Stinson, another local author, be reading from her new memoir, The Ground at My Feet, Sustaining a Family and a Forest. Anne is going to be joined by Idaho author Louise Wagenknecht, whose new book is Shadows on the Klamath, A Woman in the Woods. So they're both forestry memoirs. It sounds interesting, and they're published by OSU Press. And then on March 8th, we have Philip Margolin returning, our long-standing local thriller author, Phil Margolin, with his new Robin Lockwood mystery, The Darkest Place. Tonight, we have, let me see if there's anybody else who's coming in. Yes, let me admit a couple of other people before I tell you about tonight. Welcome.
My neighbor.
Tonight we have local author Dennis Britten reading from his new book, Men Shake Hands, and another person coming in. And another. Tonight, Dennis Britten is reading from his new book, Men Shake Hands, A Creative Reminiscence. Dennis will be accompanied by local performing artists Beth Kahlen, Bill Wuertz, Kevin Lay, as well as author Ginna BB Gordon. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the reading and performance. So feel free to type questions in the chat. I'll be happy to read them at the end. You can also click on the little hand icon that's in the reactions menu down there, and ask a question live on screen if you want, whatever you're more comfortable with. Let me tell you about Men Shake Hands. In Men Shake Hands, precocious 4-year-old Davy grapples with unanswered questions while living the up and down life of a child of divorced parents. He's in post-war Multnomah, Oregon, in the 1940s and 50s, where divorce is unusual. Davy himself is an unusual child, more interested in acting and singing than football and tag, like the other boys in the neighborhood. When Davy is betrayed, we cry with him. When he puts on his first play in the garage, we clap. At his first sensations of love, we put our virtual arms around him. And when he discovers his voice and sings, we rejoice and follow him to New York City. Men Shake Hands is a heart-grabbing story creatively based on the author's life, told in Davy's own point of view. Another person joining us, welcome. A lifelong man of the theater, Dennis Britten began as a musician, studying composition and developing as a singer. He became a member of Actors Equity and began to perform at an early age. After years of performing opera and musical theater in New York City, nationally and abroad, he returned to school where he obtained an undergraduate degree, summa cum laude, with departmental honors in theater direction at SUNY Stony Brook, and then continued on from there to earn a master's degree in creative writing. His first novel was his master's thesis, To Value Horses. To Value Both. Skipped a line, and that makes for an interesting title. While in New York, he collaborated with Kenneth Fuchs in writing the book and lyrics to their off-Broadway musical, If Wishes Were Horses. Later, as an assistant professor at Arizona State University, he founded his first theater company, Phoenix Show Space Theater, where he acted as artistic director and manager. Back in his home state of Oregon, he founded and became artistic director of Light Opera of Portland, Absurdity Done in Complete Sincerity, where his second musical, We Met in Moscow, written in collaboration with composer Kevin Bryant Lay, was produced. Dennis is also the author of one collection of poetry, Made in Oregon. Everybody welcome Dennis Britten and his fellow actors.
Good evening, and welcome to the reading of some of the bits of my book, Men Shake Hands. It's a reminiscence of my growing up in what was known then in the 40s through the 60s as just plain Multnomah. But it was a village then too, or maybe better, a small town not yet part of Portland. The book begins when Davy is about 5 and continues until he is in his 20s. I hope some of the excerpts we're reading tonight might ring a bell to some of you out there who grew up then. The readers tonight are all readers that were involved with the book before publishing. The first to read will be Bill Wuertz, reading the part of Davy in his first real experience of freedom at the age of 6.
Next morning after breakfast, I went to Billy's house. He had his friend Frank there. Frank was a little bit older than Billy, almost 8, and he had a crew cut. That's real short hair that sticks up like army guys. Frank didn't have cowlicks like Craig, so his hair went straight up. We sat on the steps of Billy's big garden shed and talked, me on the bottom step, them on the top step. Billy and Frank talked about being in the 2nd grade pretty soon and how they didn't like Mrs. Anderson, who was going to be their teacher. Frank looked down at me, made me feel little, his brown eyes quiet, kind of golden, like syrup on pancakes, but they didn't laugh like Billy's. You gonna be in 2nd grade? No, I said, 1st. Oh, 1st grade ain't nothing, he said, especially if you get Miss Right. Billy laughed. Oh yeah, he said, Frank has a crush on Miss Right. Have not, Frank said and punched Billy in the arm. Have too, Billy said. His head nodded and the blonde springs came down all squiggly, blue eyes laughing. Then Frank got up and walked a little bit away, looked up at the sky. No clouds. He turned back to us, little smile. Pretty warm already, he said. Let's go in the woods. Okay, Billy said, and we got up and followed Frank to the path. When we got to the special spot where the light came down through the little sparkles, Frank unbuttoned his shirt and hung it on a bush on the edge of the clear place around the teeter-totter. He took a pack of cigarettes out of his shirt pocket. Then he took a cigarette out and lit it with a match. He breathed in smoke, and it came out his nose. That was neat. I never saw that before. Billy saw me watching, and he laughed when he said to me, Frank taught me how to smoke. His mom and dad, they both smoke. Ain't shit, Frank said. No big deal. He kicked the toe of his penny loafer in the needles on the ground. I didn't know what to say then, him cussing like that. We all just stood there for a minute. Then Frank, he looked at me and said, well, I want to get on the teeter-totter, but I want to be naked. He kicked off his shoes and pulled his socks off. Then he just unbuttoned his pants and pulled them off. He threw them on top of his shoes. He didn't have any shorts on, and he just stood there looking at us, waiting, looking kind of scary like Mrs. Allen's dog, the dog with the golden eyes that always waited inside her fence and growled low. Frank just standing there, golden eyes, waiting, his thing hanging there for everyone to see. Billy laughed and pulled his t-shirt up over his curly hair. He twirled it around and snapped Frank in his fanny with it. Then he ran to the other side of the teeter-totter, laughing so hard he bent over. Then he unbuttoned his pants and he yanked them off. Just like that, he was naked too. Billy danced over to me, naked, eyes laughing, blonde springs all curly and bouncing. Come on, Davy, take your clothes off. Is it okay, I say? I could see out to the road through the trees. What if someone sees us? Come on, we do it all the time, Billy says. Looks like your little friend's a scaredy cat, Frank says, and his eyes go up like Scotty's, and it makes me feel stupid. I can hear my heart in my ears like it does. Someone might see, kind of scary, but fun scary. So I pull my t-shirt out of my jeans and up over my face. I can hardly lift my arms, eyes shut, dark in there. Then light and trees all around me. It's like turning around, and when you stop, everything is still turning. I know I should never take all my clothes off outside, but I'm not gonna be a scaredy cat. I drop my shirt and bend over to take my shoes off, almost fall down, taste dust and pine needles, shoes off. I unbutton my jeans and let them drop to the ground, stand there in my shorts, pants around my feet. Well, come on, Billy yells, dancing naked around the teeter-totter. Frank just standing by it, smoking, golden syrup eyes, waiting. I bend over again, still dizzy, stand on one leg and tug the bottom of one leg of my jeans, almost fall down, hop, get it off, then the other one. I stand up and drop my pants on the ground. I take a big breath and let it out. Then I yank my shorts off, step out of them. Billy yells, "Whee!" runs around me and snaps my fanny with his t-shirt. So I run to the other side of the teeter-totter. Wow, that feels so good, running naked. So I run around the teeter-totter the other way and slap Billy on the butt. He laughs and runs away. I'm not dizzy anymore, just happy, free. No big people here to get mad.
How many of you remember the age when you were really absolutely that you believed there was a fellow named Santa and hoped with all your might that he'd bring you something special for Christmas? Or the first time you got to meet him? Or maybe even better here in Portland, the Cinnamon Bear. Well, here is Kevin Lay to read the part of Davy with Bill, who will read the part of Scotty, David's older brother.
That night, Scotty stayed with us in his room next to mine with the stars on the ceiling that glow in the dark. I was happy he was in there. It was almost like it used to be. Like maybe he might even stay. Like maybe he did want to be my brother after all. After I got my pajamas on, I went in our bathroom and washed my face and brushed my teeth. Then I went by Scotty's door and saw him in bed. His room was always neat. He always hung up all his clothes like he was supposed to. Everything put away. His covers neat on the bed over him. He was reading his Boy's Life magazine. I waited in his doorway for a minute. He didn't look mad like he did before, his face quiet and handsome. He had his glasses on and looked like he was smiling at something. Only his red hair all messed up from the pillow in the back of his head. I wished I had red hair, like his, instead of old nothing brown hair. Red hair was cool. It made me feel good he was here. "Did Santa bring you anything last year?" I said. He kind of jumped and said,
What?
I was wondering why you didn't want to meet Santa today, I said. "Didn't he bring you anything last year?" He just looked at me a long time. I couldn't see his eyes, the lamplight on his glasses. Then he put his magazine down and took off his glasses. He put his finger in his red hair and said,
I'm too old for that stuff.
"Too old?"
Well, Davy, I'm gonna be 11 next month.
"Yeah, but doesn't Santa still bring you presents?" He just looked at me again, but his gray-green eyes looked like they were looking inside instead of out at me. He started biting the inside of his cheek and his eyes scrunched up. It made all his freckles come together over his nose.
Davy, why do you let them all lie to you?
He always said things like that, like I would know what he meant, when he knew I didn't. I leaned against the edge of his door, tried to look like I didn't feel stupid, like I was more interested in something outside his window, except it was dark out. Then I really felt dumb. What? I said. His forehead wrinkled down like Mom's. First time I saw, he looked a lot like her.
All that stuff about the cinnamon bear and Santa Claus. You're not a baby anymore. Why do you let them lie to you about that stuff? It pisses me off.
Scotty liked to say things army guys said, like hubba hubba or pissed off. But I knew Scotty was trying to teach me something like he did. I liked him being my big brother again and trying to teach me things. But I felt stupid, like always. My face felt hot, and I was getting mad. He really could make me feel that way. I didn't know what he was talking about. I looked down at the floor, at the linoleum there that looked like wood boards. What do you mean? I said. I looked up then, and Scotty, he just rolled his eyes around. Then he said,
It's all pretend. It's all make-believe.
I felt my chest start to get tight. What? You mean the cinnamon bear? Scotty's eyebrows came down and his nose bunched up.
Yeah, what do you think I was laughing at today? That phony cinnamon bear was sitting there with his fake head off so he could have a smoke on his break.
My throat hurt and it was hard to say, but I said, and Santa? Scotty nodded his head, but all I could see through the tears in my eyes was the lamplight shining on his red hair.
Yep, all make-believe.
I don't know why, but I knew he was just being mean. Tears started running down my face. Maybe that was why Mom was always mad at him. Maybe he always just tries to make people feel stupid. Oh, no, it's not, I yelled at him. Santa is real. Last year he brought me my place service station. And my friend, Billy, he knows better than you. The cinnamon bear is real. I ran into my room and got under my colored snowflake quilt and hugged Teddy as hard as I could. I kissed him on his nose and felt it smoosh into his face. I wiped the tears off my face with the sheet. I knew the cinnamon bear was real. I knew Teddy could take me on an adventure too if he wanted to. And I knew Santa wasn't make-believe. He brought me stuff. I don't know why Scotty is so mean. First he moves away and won't be my brother anymore, and now he comes back just to make me feel bad. I hope he doesn't come back to stay. It was raining again. The wind banged it against my bedroom windows. Then it was quiet. Then it banged again like it wanted to get in. I snuggled down under the covers with Teddy where it was nice and warm and quiet. I could always ask Mom about Santa and the cinnamon bear. I knew she'd tell me the truth.
Another time we probably all remember all too well in particular detail is the time a parent explained to us how babies get here. Davy perhaps learned a little earlier than most in those days, but some of this may seem familiar as Kevin again reads the part of Davy and Ginna Gordon reads his mom.
Mom looks at me really different when I ask if people come in eggs. Her glasses slided down on her nose under some dark lines in her forehead. Her mouth open, almost like she's mad.
What?
That look makes me kind of scared. Maybe I'm not supposed to ask that. Well, I say, People don't come in eggs, do they? Like chickens? It's Saturday at lunchtime and Mom's fixing me a sandwich. The knife is stopped in the air. Mayonnaise on it. Mom smiles then, almost like she's going to laugh, but then she stops and says, and like she's got something stuck in her throat.
I just thought you'd be a lot older when you asked me something like that.
I'm 7 years old, I say. One of her eyebrows goes up without the other one.
I know, honey.
The knife is still in the air. She looks at it like she doesn't know what to do with it. Just then, our black cat Mom brought home from the bakery jumps up on the windowsill outside the kitchen window and starts to thump. She learned that somebody comes to let her in the house when she scratches herself there, and her elbow thumps the window. Thump, thump, thump. Her elbow goes against the window. Mom looks over at the window. She lets out her breath like she was holding it and puts the knife down on the drain board. She takes another big breath like she's going to do something hard. Then she says,
Hang on a minute, Davy.
after Mom lets Kitty in, she brings my sandwich and sits down at the table across from me and looks at me with that look that usually makes me feel special. But now it's mixed up with something else, like it hurts, and I don't want to look back. I look down at the little brown mole in the V of her throat, then down at her hand on the table. The ruby ring on her finger, John says, 8 carat, French cut.
Davy, your father didn't want kids.
I hear what she says, but I don't, because of the buzz it makes in my head. Then she's saying,
When we got married, I was 19 and I didn't know anything about babies. My parents, like a lot of parents at that time, didn't believe in talking about it. So Scotty was already on the way when we got married. I swore then that when my children began to ask questions, I would tell them everything.
I loved my mom so much right then. Talking to me like I'm a big person, somebody grown up, like she is. So then Mom, she told me that people's babies didn't need an eggshell to protect them because the mama's body swelled up around the baby to protect it until it was ready to be born. Then she said she would start at the beginning and told me how people babies were made, how the man uses his thing to help make the baby, how he puts it in the lady's thing. That made me kind of dizzy when I thought about it, and my tummy felt weird, but then she said that what they do is only possible when two people love each other very much. That made me feel a little better. It sounded okay. I wondered if I would ever find somebody to feel that way about. So when we had to do that to make a baby, it wouldn't be yucky. After I asked her about babies and how they got here, after she told me how they did get here, after that, she told me that my brother, Scotty, was an accident. Well, I thought maybe that was like falling off your bicycle, but she explained to me what she meant was that he was a surprise. It was then I found out why I felt special to her when she looked at me that certain way. It was then she told me I was not an accident. I was not a surprise. I was born because I was wanted.
Like I told you, your father didn't want kids.
The buzz was in my head again, and my face was hot. Right then, I didn't like my dad very much. I don't think Mom wanted me to, either. He wasn't even as good a dad as that Robin. At least the baby Robin's dad stayed around when the baby needed him. I took a gulp of my milk because my throat was burning again.
Even after your brother was born, your dad was determined we wouldn't have any more babies. He was born poor and still didn't make very much money. So he figured we just couldn't afford them. And besides, he really didn't like kids.
I looked down at my sandwich on the plate in front of me so she wouldn't see my eyes were wet. Didn't like kids? That's why he left? I was a kid, and he didn't like kids. I didn't like my dad right then either. She told me that she begged and pleaded. She told him that Scotty deserved to have a brother or sister so he wouldn't be alone. Mom said she had 2 sisters and her brother.
That's what Irish Catholics do, have lots of kids.
Kitty rubbed against my leg under the table. She wanted to be petted. I didn't want to pet her. Mom was looking out the window, the kitchen window, into the backyard, but her eyes looked like they were looking far away.
Catholics don't believe in prevention.
Prevention? Mom looked over at me then, but like she didn't see me. Then her eyebrows went up, surprised. She took a big breath and let it out again. Kitty walked out through the kitchen door into the front room.
Sweetie, remember those white balloons you found in your dad's drawer before we moved here? You blew them up around the neighborhood and I got mad at you.
Yeah, I said.
Well, those are called prophylactics. They're to keep people from having babies.
She let a big breath out and her shoulders went down. Her hand brushed some breadcrumbs off the table.
Your dad used them so we wouldn't have babies.
Mom looked over at me. Her eyes got red, then watery, and she looked down. Her mouth closed and her teeth bit down hard.
I tried everything. I even went so far as to poke holes in them. Nothing worked.
Then she told me that she threatened to leave him. I was born after that.
I'd like to take you now on a little detour as Davy, a bit older, spends a few months on his Aunt Pearl's and Uncle Herb's dairy farm in Forest Grove with cousin Velma, a young cowgirl. It's a time when they were still bringing wild horses down out of the coastal mountains. Aunt Pearl will be read by Ginna Gordon and Velma by Beth Kahlen. One time I asked Velma, my cousin, if I could ride Star. He was a beautiful black horse with a white star in the middle of his forehead. His head never drooped like those other horses, and his eyes were always bright and really wide open, like you couldn't fool him, no matter how you tried. Aunt Pearl said he had spirit. Velma's blue eyes shot at me like cold blue icicles when I asked that.
Unmute yourself.
Excuse me. Nobody rides Star but me. He's my horse. He won't let anybody ride him but me.
My whole body got cold then and hot too at the same time. I liked riding Chubby. He was an old horse, but he was an old horse. Kind of slow and fat. He'd plod alongside the road when I wanted him to gallop. Sometimes he'd gallop for a minute if I used the heel of the boot hard in his flank like Aunt Pearl taught me. Then I'd pretend I was the Lone Ranger on my good friend Silver. But Chubby didn't like to run. You could tell because right away he'd go all poopy again. And I wanted him to run because he wanted to, not because I kicked him. I wanted him to have spirit. Star was a young horse, and like Aunt Pearl said, he had spirit. He was so beautiful to watch. Even when he was just grazing in the pasture, I could watch him for hours. His smooth muscles moving under the black silky coat. Quiet then, but those muscles could explode and he'd be running in a minute. There was something still wild about him. And I really wanted to ride him. So I made a plan. One morning, I woke up really early. It was still almost dark out. I didn't want to take the time to saddle up Star because Aunt Pearl and Velma and some of the farmhands would be up soon. So I quiet opened the stall and went in and stood in front of him kind of like Scotty's Jack Armstrong, All-American Boy, my chest out, swinging my arms a little bit. So he backed out. I soft patted his neck high up as I could reach and just walked him out of the barn. In the pasture, I climbed up on the rail fence beside him, took a hold of his mane to keep him steady, and threw my leg over him like I saw Velma do. I guess since he didn't know what I was doing, Star, he jumped a little and snorted when I landed on him. But then he went calm again. The grass there was cool and damp, and Star yanked up a mouthful and started to munch. Light was coming up into the gray sky and glowed on the top of the hills around the pasture. A mourning dove was hooting every few minutes. There was a sour kind of sharp smell of buttercups in the grass that Star walked on, mixed with his warm horse smell. A cool kind of damp breeze blew over the hills and down into the pasture. I was so glad to be on Aunt Pearl's farm again, high up on his strong, beautiful horse. His coarse mane twisted in my fingers, his muscles moving slow under my legs. To be taller than I ever was before, like I fast grew up to be a giant. Alice, after she ate that cake that said, "Eat me" on it. The buttercups then, tiny yellow specks down there. It was like a wonderful dream, but real. I didn't have to pretend anymore like I did with Chubby. Star didn't seem to mind me up on him at all. He was fine. I took him once around the fence, listening to him snort now and then like he was talking to me. Then out through the gate and onto the gravel road, because that's what he was telling me to do. He was calm as we started away from the farm. I leaned down and talked to him nice, and he twitched his ears and snorted like he liked me talking to him. When we got up beside the pavement, I let him run a little. He was still fine, so I thought we better go back before everybody got up. We turned around toward the farm, and Star was all of a sudden different. His skin shivered under me like a little wave. His head snapped up, and a high sound squealed up loud out of his mouth. It was like he was asleep, and when he saw the farm and barns, he woke up and took off down the gravel road. His front hooves hit the gravel like exploding, and I almost flew off his back. But my hands held onto his mane, and his rear came up hard on my fanny. Then he was galloping. It was like flying. No pretend flying like on the Moo Cow Hill, but really flying. Damp morning air blew by my ears, and every part of my body jerked and pulled over the powerful legs under me, his body pounding my butt, rocking me in his rhythm. A crazy buzzing came up between my legs and into my chest. Then it came out my mouth, and I couldn't stop it. I yelled, "Yahoo!" Then again louder, "Yahoo, Star!" Nothing was ever this exciting. Laughing was coming out of me, and I yelled, "Yeah, go Star!" Aunt Pearl and Velma, standing on the porch, were statues. Statues standing next to each other, staring at me and Star coming up to the house lickety-split, their arms limp, mouths hanging open, dumb cow looks on their faces. I pulled on his mane and tried to slow him down, but it was like I wasn't even there. He was snorting loud, and lather came up on his coat, his smell really strong. He was going way too fast. Gravel crackled and banged against the porch, flying up behind us as we tore down the road by the house. I yelled at him, "Whoa, whoa!" But he just kept tearing down the road. No matter what I did, Star kept going. He didn't even slow down when Velma started screaming, "Star, Star, whoa, Star!" He was going for the barn. That exciting buzz turned scary in me. Velma threw something down hard on the porch. I think it was his bridle. She cussed, and Aunt Pearl hollered at her, but Velma jumped off the porch and started running for the barn. All I could see then from where I was on Star was the top of the barn door coming from my head, and my head split open by it, a big red splat all over the top of the barn. I didn't think I could duck low enough to get under, but there was this pipe running all along just under the top of the door. Almost there, I reached out and it was in my hands. Star tore under it and the pipe stayed in my hands. It was really cold or hot. I couldn't tell, but it pulled me off his back. Star's hoofs were clomping on the cement floor of the barn, slowing down, and I tried to get off the pipe, but my hands didn't want to let me go. They were stuck. Then this awful pain shot up my arms and I fell off the pipe onto the ground. My hands were burning something awful. I sat up and looked down at what used to be my hands. Weird looking. Gray-white skin, just pieces. Skin was gone off of both of my hands, and while I was looking, blood started to ooze out, little red rubies from under the jaggedy edges of the gray-white pieces, like the ruby in Mom's ring. Then flashing sparks in my eyes, black walnut milkshake yuck in my stomach.
Oh, my Lord, Davy, are you all right?
Aunt Pearl said, kneeling next to me on the ground. I guess so, I said, but my hands. She reached out and grabbed my hands, trying to see, squeezed them in hers. She was so worried. I hollered, ow! More black walnut milkshake yuck in my stomach.
Oh, I'm sorry, Davy. You were hanging onto the freezing pipe. It runs to the cooling house to cool the milk.
The wart by her bottom lip that made Aunt Pearl, quivered, and she let out a big breath.
I don't know if it would have been worse to just hit your head.
Right.
Velma
I
said,
told him-
standing over me with her cold blue eyes.
I told him Star was my horse.
Davy, inspired by the Portland Civic Theater production of Rumpelstiltskin and urged by his friend Sonny Lee, decides to do a performance of their play that Sonny Lee and he based on the early sci-fi movie Rocket Ship XM. It will take place in the neighbor's garage, but first Davy finds it necessary to give an acting lesson to Sonny Lee. Here's Kevin again with Beth Kahlen as Sonny.
There was still too much to think about. So Sonny Lee and me, we got together in Craig's garage to work on the first part, the part where the Colonel Floyd Graham tells Dr. Lisa Van Horn his idea to fly a spaceship to Mars. It was in her laboratory, so we didn't need anything there except a card table and chairs and a lot of bottles of chemicals and stuff. It was the part that Sonny Lee would be really good at, like she always was in real life. At school, anyway. Just serious and listening, just serious and listening was who Dr. Lisa Van Horn was. And so was Sonny Lee. But she wasn't. Sonny Lee started doing all kinds of weird things that morning in Craig's garage, talking loud, banging the table, picking up bottles and walking fast around in circles, laughing and joking, while the colonel was trying to tell her his plan. Finally, I stopped telling her the plan, stopped doing the play, and asked her what she was doing.
I was just acting.
Oh, I said. My face was all warm. Could you be more like you are, well, in school? She looked her blue eyes straight at me, not blinking, and her face kind of red.
What do you mean, like at school?
It was like I had something in my throat. Well, Serious. You know, quiet and serious.
You mean I shouldn't say anything?
Well, maybe you should, I stood still, something in my throat. Just listen.
Well, how do they know I'm just listening?
They?
Well, the people out there in the driveway.
Oh, I said. Well, if you nod your head, they'll know. She nodded her head. We started again, me telling her my plan to take a spaceship to Mars. Sunny Lee put her elbows up on the card table. Some of the bottles rattled. I got nervous then, wondering what she was gonna do next. But she put her hands together like she was praying, but with her fingers spread apart and touching, like a spider on a mirror. She leaned toward me on the other side of the table and got that serious look on her face like she did when she was watching a science movie at school about finding uranium in the desert or something. Her blue eyes just half open and wrinkles thinking in her forehead. When I came to the end of a sentence, she nodded her head and her hands tipped forward too.
Mm-hmm.
She said real soft. Then again,
Uh-huh.
tilting her fingers, like she was really listening hard to the colonel and figuring out what chemicals she could make to get the spaceship where it was going. She was perfect. Professional.
We've decided not to read much of the relationship between Davy and his best friend Billy, but to leave that to you as you read the book. However, here's a scene in their friendship between the two, who are both in the 4th or 5th grade, spending the weekend at Davy's grandparents' farm in Aloha. Bill will read the part again of Davy, and Kevin, Billy.
The sun woke me up the first morning Billy and me stayed at Grandma and Grandpa's farm. It came in the attic, all colored, red, green, blue, through the colored glass window under the little peak in the roof. I rolled over to look at it coming through the colored glass, straw crunch in the mattress under me, soft, warm feathers in like a big pillowcase over me, feather bed. There's a rooster crowing out back, maybe singing. Billy got to sleep downstairs in Grandma's guest room. He's the guest, she said. She decided. Me up, Billy down. But I like this better anyway. Crunchy straw, warm feathers. I laid still. No sound now from downstairs. My hand up by the window, moved it slow. It turned different colors, gold and green and blue. Back of my hand, yellow, fingers purple. I slow slid out from under the feathers. The air is all of a sudden cold, got up quiet then, pulled my jeans on over my underpants, tucked in my t-shirt. The wood stairs rough on my bare feet going down. One creaked. I stopped. Quiet. Then downstairs I slow opened the guest room door. Billy's still asleep. His blonde hair smooshed on one side, neat little ears, smooth brown arm up on the pillow, bent over his head, tiny blonde hairs on his skin. The room is full of his bread baking smell. Soft breathing. Grandma's clock ticking on top of the lace whatchamacallit on the dresser. There's that warm kind of electric thing in my chest again watching Billy sleep. I slow sit down in the chair beside his bed. Slow, slow so it won't squeak. Listen to him breathe, smell his smell. I'm waiting for him to wake up, watching him. And the warm in my chest spreads up my neck, into my throat, down into my stomach, like tickling. Nice, but it almost makes me dizzy. There's a noise then out in the kitchen, like a chair scooting. Billy rolls over. His blonde eyelashes move like little moth wings. His mouth opens big and his fists pop out of the covers in a stretch. Eyes come open.
Hey, he says, what time is it?
Don't know, I say, my face all burny.
Is it time to get up?
Another yawn. Sleepy blue eyes. I guess so. I think Grandma's up.
As I said, we have not read much about the relationship between the two boys. But one of the reasons this book was written is that the very obvious love that arises between the two has been a discussion to be avoided for generations. And on this point of time, I'd like to believe that an honest and open discussion might be possible. What do you think? Anyone want to join in? I'll give you a start. What was the first thought you had when I said the obvious love between the boys? Michael, do we have any chat comments?
Nothing in the chat yet, but feel free to post in the chat or
Well,
up on the screen there. Diane's going to say
Can I
something.
just talk?
Go ahead,
Sure.
Diane.
Just struck by how tender it was at such a young age. And I don't recall anything like that in my own life. So that was what's first really, I just thought that was just incredible and wonderful.
Michael? Michael, our reader.
The other Michael.
The other.
Well,
There he is.
I have an idea.
How about you? You usually have something to say about this.
I think one of the strengths of this book is that it brings up the facts of life no matter where you are in the world. This is part of life in Eskimo villages where I've lived, in Europe, in Africa, in all over the world. And I think it's just something that we all need to look at and deal with and not be afraid of. It's just who people are around the world. And that part of the story is sadly not well received, at least by some people, but it's humanity.
May I
Well,
mention something?
yeah.
I have a daughter that when she was in college was in the kitchen in our room, in our house. And I walked in and said, Dad, I have something to tell you. And I said, what's that? I said, Leslie and I are girlfriends. And I said, I really like Leslie. And she said, is that okay with you? Being an old Marine and all that? Nothing to lose a daughter over. So, so it was one of those things that just kind of came into my life in a natural way, I guess. And my reaction to it was, it's not a big deal. And as it turns out, I have a stepdaughter who also is gay, and I have a daughter who is gay. Both of them are married to women. And I think, I never ever thought with having 4 daughters, I would have daughters-in-law. And it's wonderful. I can get daughters-in-law birthday cards.
Well, the question that I had too was that when we see two little boys that are so fond of each other, or two little girls holding hands, and we think it's so cute that they're together, what age do we all of a sudden start avoiding looking at that and doubting it and so forth? And why does sex always interfere with everything, even same-sex marriages, when we could be calling it same-gender marriages? Is sex all that has to do with a marriage? I don't think so. And I think that if we continue discouraging love in young people, what kind of adults are they going to be? If we keep shaming them when they feel love, when they're young. I hope we've come to a point in our culture where we can start talking about this and maybe avoiding sex and talking about love a little more. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book.
Don't you think that girls are allowed to, like, sleep overnight and sleep in the same bed and hug and hang out together a lot longer or a lot more openly than men are?
And holding hands.
Yeah, longer
Holding
anyway.
hands longer.
I have a great comment from Sarah. She says, I'm on my phone because I'm watching a baby goat being born, but I think of the ease that my children accept and understand queerness, and coming out was no big deal, but for my friends and I, even 20 years ago, it was a huge issue. And to answer your question, because we are living in a weird puritanical society.
Yeah.
Well, I guess probably we won't answer the question here, but I hope that you will all enjoy reading Men Shake Hands.
It's an
so.
amazing, beautiful book. Read it.
Mhm.
It is.
I'm going to put the link here in the chat again, and we would love it if you'd hop over there and buy the book from Annie Blooms. That'd be great. Thank you for the wonderful reading and acting. That was a treat. We don't usually have that for readings. That was a really nice extra feature of this event. The event's being recorded, so if you know people who weren't able to make it tonight, tell them to go over to the website. There in our event section, there's a link to our Annie Bloom's YouTube channel, so they can go and watch it there later. And if there are no more questions or comments.
I'd like to say something if I could.
Yes, Diane.
I'm Dennis's former sister-in-law, and I was married to Scotty. And I just want to say, Dennis, I knew him when he was an adult, but when you were reading about what he was like as a boy, I could really, really hear in the adult that he became and what you talked about him. And I just want to tell you how appreciative I am of that, and what a total pleasure it was to be here and listen to you tonight. It was so
Well,
grateful for it.
prepare yourself when you read the book. He's in it a lot.
I will.
All right. Good closing comment.
That is so lovely, Diane. That is so,
Yes.
that's so wonderful to know,
Yeah.
your connection to this story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say here on the book, I have actually read it. Yes, more than once. And also thank you to Michael at Annie Blooms, and also recognizing that this story takes place right in Multnomah Village, which is where Annie Blooms is. So it's really appropriate and lovely to be able to do this from Annie Blooms, because it's the independent bookstore in our neighborhood. I happen to live right in the neighborhood too, from where Dennis grew up. And so that's a really cool thing. And just looking at kind of some of the history of this area and this neighborhood. So it's another good reason to support Dennis and to support Annie Blooms. So
Well,
thank
thanks,
you,
Beth.
Michael.
Thank you.
Beth, it has charmed me no end to find out that you and Michael are touring around to places that are in the book to see what they're like now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moo Cow Hill. Just jogged through there today.
Sunny Lee and her family had a cow, Betsy, on that hill. Now it's filled with houses, but it was the Moo Cow Hill.
That's great.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself, Sonny, so we can hear you.
Oh, I'm finally getting this. Dennis was always directing plays in the neighborhood. And he tells me, and I think so, I was the only girl that was allowed to be in his plays. And I had one line. What was the line, Dennis?
All I remember was the
That was my line. So Dennis and I have known each other a long time. It's a wonderful friendship.
Since we were 6 or 7, something like that.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Annie Blooms, for hosting this. I really do appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
It's been fun to do.
Good. All right, everyone. Thanks again for attending and have a really good night.
Thank you.
Bye,
I'm
everyone.
looking forward to reading it.
Good.
Yeah, cool.